Hi and welcome to the Homeopathy Health Show. I'm Materia, a fourth generation homeopath with over 25 years of professional experience and practice in this field of healing. The Homeopathy Health Show is the online voice of homeopathy around the world, promoting and raising awareness of this truly unique complementary system of healing, which is suitable for all ages, young and old. Every week, I invite guests from the world of homeopathy to come and share their experiences, their work, offer insights, and essentially talk all things homeopathy. Why not visit www.liketreatslike.co.uk and click on the radio and podcast button to listen to the latest episodes. So let's begin today's show here on UK Health Radio, the world's #1 talk health radio. Hi everybody, I hope you are well, and always, I sincerely hope and pray it remains that way. So I've got another very, very interesting homeopathy health show for you today here on UK Health Radio. And hey, the days are looking better, aren't they? I mean, hopefully the sun will shine eventually, but I see a glimmer of sunshine here and there through the heavy thunderstorms, but we hope, certainly. Last couple of weeks, I spent some time in the garden, finally, after many, many months. And I'm waiting for my petunias actually to bloom. But the rain seems to be dampening that somewhat. But it's just one of those things, isn't it? You just, I have to be patient. Hopefully, they'll be blooming soon enough. And then I can perhaps tinker about in the garden a bit more. Now, today's guest, I'm very, very pleased and honored to be speaking to Dr. Gaurang Gaikwad, who is from Mumbai in India. Dr. Gaurang is one of the most popular teachers actually among students over the globe. And in the past few years, he's successfully trained homeopaths, and hundreds of homeopaths, in fact, through his online courses. And he has found his own online teaching platform and has been very successful running courses for students, practitioners, and actually homeopaths alike. I have a lot of questions for Dr. Gaurang, but I would actually start with saying that he has blended a classical homeopathy with advanced kingdom approach to have an artistic way where homeopathy and lifestyle changes are used in synergy to treat patients. Without further ado, I will introduce Dr. Gaurang Gaikwad. Doctor, thank you so much for joining me here today on the Homeopathy Health Podcast.
Hello and namaste, and it's such a pleasure and honor that I am part of this very special podcast that you have lined up. Thank you so much for having me.
No, it's brilliant. I'm actually happy that despite the time difference, we still managed to hook up. And I know you've had a very, very busy day indeed. So thank you so much for your time. God bless you. Now, you've probably been asked this question so many times, but for the purposes of the listeners, would you just highlight your journey to homeopathy? Was it chance? Was it error? Sometimes I've actually been speaking to homeopaths, and it was not chance. It was just an error that had been made, but they found themselves falling in love with homeopathy.
Bhattiji, I don't know if you know this, but just some time back, I saw one of my favorite movies. And I'm a huge movie buff. I really watch some really chosen movies which I really like a lot, and of different languages. And there is this movie, I hope you have seen it. It's a kind of an Indian movie, but it's a fairly well-known internationally. This name of the movie is Lunchbox, and it stars one of my favorite actors, the late Irfan Khan. I hope you have seen this.
Yes.
There is a kind of the whole movie is such an amazing movie that I don't want to give you the whole story. I hope some of the participants watch this movie. And in that, there is a very interesting line which actually kind of defines some part of our life or my life. And that is that where, he says at one point that sometimes the wrong train takes you to the right station. So I think somewhere that symbolizes a little bit of my journey, you could say that.
Interesting. Actually, staying with Irfan Khan, the late Irfan Khan, he actually was a really, really good actor because
Absolutely.
there was a lot of emotions and a very, very professional the way he was, and that's why obviously he ended up in one of the very big movies, which was Life of Pi.
In fact, he did quite a few movies, and if I'm not wrong, there's a latest movie that has come, The Scorpion Sting, which is his last movie that he's made before he kind of died due to the brain tumor. And he was an artist.
You know, I can see, I've just realized that when I'm picturing Irfan Khan and I'm looking at you, and you know, there's a glimmer of resemblance there. I'm sure you've been told that before. Is that right?
Sorry?
Someone must have said that before too, right? After this podcast, I'm going to send you a picture of Irfan Khan, and you look at yourself in the mirror, and then look at him, and then say, but he was right, you know?
Do you say that to every kind of participant or every speaker who comes? Because I hope someone doesn't say my favorite actor is Brad Pitt, or maybe
No.
Some strange actress, because then it would be very difficult.
I only say to my wife, I'm Brad Pitt, and she says, no, you're not, so please be quiet now. So that's the end of that discussion, you know? So tell me, one of the most fascinating areas that I was reading up, of course, on what you're up to at the moment, is very much to do with teaching. And you have been actually very, very successful, especially with running courses and helping students, practitioners, and just enthusiasts. So do tell us where this passion came from and your teaching style.
Sure. So, I started my conversation with you talking about sometimes the wrong kind of train takes you to the right station. I do believe that your environment makes the entire difference. And when I started off, I come off from a family of doctors. Both my parents are ophthalmologists, actually, eye surgeons in Mumbai. And in fact, my mother comes from one of the top allopathic hospitals in India, where she was a eye surgeon and also ophthalmologist and a teacher, JJ Hospital, Mumbai, if you know about it. So interestingly, when I was young, I would go around with them doing all these kind of eye camps and checking the eye numbers. And much later, now almost I'm 37-year-old. I'm going to be 37-year-old. So now at the age of 37, I run an OPD in Mumbai, where we have ophthalmic patients which are evaluated by my mother, who's an ophthalmologist, and I prescribe the homeopathic medicine. So we have probably the world's first integrative ophthalmic OPD. So the whole journey of that, of 37 years, is quite interesting in that way. And it starts from the fact that I was never interested in homeopathy. I got admission in one of these colleges, a dental college in Mumbai. And as you know, it's very competitive here to get a seat in most of these colleges. And I was not a very hardworking student going off. And I thought that maybe better than dentistry would be to try something like alternate medicine. I joined it. I didn't find it interesting. And then destiny kind of introduced me to my first teacher. And that was a teacher. And that's also another person whom you should actually do a podcast with, is Dr. Vijay Vaishnav. Now he's based in California in the US. And he's probably one of the finest homeopaths on this planet at this moment. Very clinical, very, very methodical, and very classical. So he introduced me into homeopathy. He took me under his wings, and that made an entire difference. And after that, I worked with Dr. Sankaran. I went to Kolkata. I worked with Dr. Sarkar, Dr. L.M. Khan. Then I traveled the entire part of the country, trying to learn from different homeopaths, understanding all approaches together. And then finally, I kind of started working on my own self, how I can integrate all this together to help my patients. So this, in short, is my journey, if I could put it in few words.
It's fascinating what you said, because you've learned from the best. And it's like, at the beginning of this podcast, I said every homeopath's an artist. So, you've seen the Rembrandts and the Picassos, you've seen the style. And that's the beauty of homeopathy, because you leave all of that and then you become your own artist, and you start to paint your own journey, your own picture for moving forward. And that is actually a very big plus point as far as homeopathy goes, because, and don't you agree, Dr. Gaurang, it's very personal, isn't it? Homeopathy. Not every homeopath, of course, not every homeopath is going to practice in the same way. But that's the beauty of homeopathy. You can specialize and you can very skillfully tailor or tinker around with various sub-modalities within the umbrella of homeopathy and go with whatever is favorable to you and what you feel comfortable with.
It's very interesting actually, this, because Picasso you spoke about, and Picasso spoke something very interestingly. I don't know if Picasso exactly spoke this or they write that Picasso spoke about this, but an idea that you have to learn all the rules like a pro to then learn how to break them as an artist. So I do believe that as a homeopath, one of the first things one needs to do to become a real pro artist is to go in depth, is to master the basics at the deepest level. And it is only when you really master it at the deepest level, at some point, you will see art starts forming on its own, and you kind of become a medium of it. So I think till that point, one has to really work on going by the books or going by the basics. And I do believe that sometimes one directly goes into trying to become an artist, and that's where they kind of go off hook. And that's where I genuinely do believe that to put a decade of learning under someone who's really classical probably makes an entire difference. And if you're lucky enough, and if you're able to understand different approaches together, you're really able to understand in which case what approach would be needed. And that itself is actually an art.
Fascinating. In fact, I remember, I heard this saying once from one of my sort of mentors, that you read the book and then you throw it out the window, not literally, but, metaphorically, because there's only so many books you can read. But it's actually the clinical experience. It's actually when you physically sit in front of a patient who's suffering is when you come into your own and you actually start to, and even compassion, isn't this right? Even compassion is a journey. You can't just fall into compassion and be compassionate. It's a journey, because as you treat more and more patients, as you learn more, as you see more and more ailments, naturally, for a homeopath, that compassion starts to increase and increase.
Yeah. It's true, because I'll give you one very personal example. One of my biggest moment of grief in my life, and I remember this because I was with one of my mentors, and I asked him that, why this at this point of my life? And he told me that you have to undergo this if you wish at some point to understand someone else's grief. And maybe that was what it was, because to experience grief or to heal someone else's grief, you have to go through some part of it yourself to really be in that energy sphere. And I do believe that that whatever one goes through actually is something for probably there is much bigger energy, much bigger system that is making us do what we are ending up doing in that.
That's actually a very pertinent subject matter, grief, because we've just recently been through a global pandemic. It's played havoc with emotions, hasn't it? It's played havoc with people's lives, because, I lost so many good, dear friends because of the pandemic. And it was so sudden, and you couldn't even have time to actually help. And that's a grief where you see the suffering of patients, and it really does sometimes overwhelm you. But like you've said, you have to go through some things for you to become for you to be able to understand and appreciate what somebody else is going through. It's like a young couple who do not have a child cannot explain to someone else that this is how you should change a nappy to a mother, because they haven't been through that. It's fine reading in a book, this is what you have to do, ABC. Actually, there's usually a D and an E in a nappy, but anyway, where you change the nappy. But unless you've experienced that yourself, it's very difficult. So it's a very wise point that you've made indeed.
And just because you put up this point, something very interesting, Bhattiji, is that the pandemic was a turning point for a lot of people, including someone like me, because yes, like in many other countries, even in India, there was a lockdown for a fair amount of time, and we were at home. But there was something very interesting that happened here in India and in different parts of the world, because I'm also associated with teaching in Brazil, in Europe, especially in France, Switzerland, and in the US as well. So What happened was that there were many complicated cases. There were lesser beds in a place like India. As you must have read or heard about it, people didn't want to go to hospitals. And that's what gave us an opportunity to treat patients with homeopathy. And I'm not saying this only about myself, but I would like to put it across that many Indian homeopaths did some remarkable work by going out of the way, helping patients, even in the hospital, treating with integrated homeopathy. And I was lucky enough to treat quite a few patients with my team here. One of the doctors here, Dr. Jayashi, helped me along with a group of about 7 or 8 doctors that worked with me, and we helped patients across the globe. And many homeopaths did, and we even collected data. We even presented some of this work in Brazil, in the US, even in some parts of Switzerland when I went last year. And we created something called as a kind of a COVID literature, like, COVID repertory in that way, which I'm going to share it with you for all the participants of this kind of audio. Whoever would want to would be interested, you can give that literature as a gift from me. And after that, something even more interesting happened, as that is post-COVID and post-vaccination syndrome. So many post-COVID patients had a long COVID history, loss of smell. Some people, the autoimmune diseases started increasing. Some people, there was kind of hair fall. Women, they had amenorrhea. So many hormonal issues, and we started working on them with homeopathy. And we even created a post-COVID and post-vaccination repertory, which again is something that we work very interestingly. It's still work in progress, but I would be giving that again to you, that you can share it with your readers so that they can help more people and document and get back to us.
That's actually very, very kind of you. And I look forward to receiving that. I think there's going to be a lot of people who are going to be jumping at something like that, because there isn't enough information out there. And this is very, very key. So many patients, of course, this is going to be the same with you. I see so many patients who have fallout symptoms of COVID. They did get COVID. They survived, of course, they have strong immune systems, but it's what's left behind, which is sometimes more difficult to treat than the actual original or primary condition itself. It's the fallout, isn't it?
Absolutely. And here is where a lot of nosodes were used. For example, many patients after COVID develop a lot of pessimistic attitude towards everywhere, and post-COVID develop a lot of weakness. Sorinum was one of the remedies that we used a lot. For example, many patients develop a lot of hair fall related issues. They got thallium metallicum. So many such kind of clinical hints we collected. Many of them helped. Many of them required some other remedies also. But the idea is that how we can kind of really understand this and in a very artistic way, skillful way, help our patients with individualized approach.
And do you still find that the long COVID, as it's called, is still very much prevalent in India, or certainly where you are?
Everywhere, because whatever said and done, a large number of people in India, in the West, were vaccinated post-COVID. They even were given booster dose. So homeopathy and lifestyle change, and I give a lot of importance to lifestyle change, including nutrition and certain exercises. This together can really help patients to put them in a good place and heal from within. I do believe it's a medicine of future.
Do tell us more about your approach, where you're using homeopathy and lifestyle changes. Share, if you can share some examples of what that involves and your thinking behind this.
I'll give you one of the examples that comes to my mind, because it's one of the cases that I saw recently. So one such patient with almost a 3rd stage of avian connected to us told me that since I have been diagnosed of avian, I suggest me a surgery. I don't want to undergo surgery. Still the whole principles of homeopathy remain the same. We did a very individualized case. We went in detail, the case taking, understanding the chief complaint, the deeper state, the mental state, the fears, the anxieties, the dreams, the generalities, the past history, the family history, understanding the whole case, understanding the portrait of disease. We chose a ultra diluted homeopathic remedy, a remedy all of our participants know, very simple remedy I prescribed, Hepar sulf, which was indicated in that case. And gradually, within 4 to 5 months, this guy who was almost bedridden, who along with homeopathy, we suggested certain changes in diet. We reduced certain kind of allergic substances in diet, like we reduced milk, a lot of wheat, a lot of non-veg. Alcohol was really tapered down along with homeopathic medicine. Certain very basic yoga exercises were added. So all this together, we homeopathy, exercise, and nutrition. And within 4 months, this guy was another person. He now actually jogs for 25 minutes every day, probably a little more than some of our participants who might be listening. So it was something that even for us, it was a very interesting experience, how integrated healing with homeopathy can be one of the very important mediums. And I don't say it is the only medium, but it can be one of the very strong mediums where we can have healing for our patients.
Nutrition plays a very, very strong part in any health protocol, irrespective of whether it's conventional medicine, homeopathy, or whatever, anything else, Ayurvedic, Chinese medicine. Nutrition is key, and that's predominantly because of the sheer number of chemicals that we're taking alongside food, and that's no fault of anybody. It's just the way things are. We have to feed a growing population around the world. Food manufacturing processes have to change. They have changed, of course, for better or worse. But the chemicals are playing havoc. Sterility, for example, is becoming rampant. So many, it's very sad to say, so many couples with the same issue, that they're unable to have children. And fortunately, though, I say, with homeopathy, they can. But initially, those who don't know about homeopathy, they're stuck. As an example, I'm not saying, it's homeopathy and that's it, but there are other systems as well, of course, and even within conventional medicine, IVF system and so forth, IVF treatment rather. But what I mean is, for those who don't know, there's a lot of suffering out there, isn't it? Because you're unable to start a family.
Actually, you spoke about infertility, and I'd like to talk to you about 2-3 interesting aspects. Is number one, homeopathy, depending on what is the reason for infertility. There is a primary infertility, secondary infertility. Infertility can be due to polycystic ovarian disease, and we are talking about women there. Male also can be azoospermia, no spermia. It can be due to many health related issues. But the long and short of it, that homeopathy can be a very important kind of a tool here to heal. And I have quite a few cases of this which are documented very well. In fact, it's part of the topic for my next book, which is on homeopathic approach and strategies in female and hormonal disorders. Interestingly, as we speak, a week back, I launched my book on you can see here, and I'll try to send you a copy, Bhattiji. It's homeopathic strategies in acute cases with maps. And here I have documented cases of COVID and post-COVID in acutes that we help, and I'll request Dr. Jaya to send it across to you so you can go through it and it will be interesting for you. Coming back, your thought is that even Hahnemann spoke about this. So interestingly, if you read Organon and if you read his writings, he specifically wrote that men who are having infertility issues, ejaculation, sexual issues, they should reduce meat. He clearly writes that you should stop chicken. He writes it. He says, right, stop chicken. If someone 260 years back with that wisdom, Master Hahnemann hasn't written 6 volumes just like that. He was not just another doctor. His understanding and learnings were at another level. So if he has written about it so many years back, definitely we need to at least look at it and make it part of our integrated healing. And it makes a big difference, is nutrition in today's time.
Absolutely.
There are many other things here. For example, in India, many patients are also very keen about chicken or meat. So the idea is not to stop it. This is a very important thing. We don't totally stop it. The number one thing that we suggest is try to get chicken from an organic place where the chickens are not pumped up with steroids and hormones and antibiotics and all this kind of story you already and the listeners already know about. And the other thing is to cut it down, to make it not daily, but maybe once, twice a week. So the idea is to have this kind of more balanced approach and not extremist. Totally stopping it, not a good idea. And having it over, not a great idea. So how to balance this entire thing? Some kind of education can be for our patient. That makes the entire difference.
I found over the last sort of several years that a lot of patients now are becoming very self-aware and self-conscious. And what I mean by that is, as far as their health needs are concerned. So, they're becoming aware that, look, I need to make changes. You mentioned lifestyle. Patients are wanting to do it. And sometimes it just needs a little push from someone else where you're having therapy and you're talking or counseling, and they're ready, because people have realized that, look, diet is very, very key to good mental health, good emotional balance, resistance to being ill itself, and generally vitality levels overall. We've seen, for example, and I'm sure this is the same case with you in certainly here in the UK, but also we know in America and other places, managing weight, an increase of weight, is becoming more and more difficult. Not everybody has time to go to the gym. Not everybody is focused or has that type of drive to go to the gym or to exercise. But people are now becoming more and more aware that, look, we need to take some positive steps here and we need to do something about our health.
Absolutely. And this is where the health workers and people like you and me and the physicians and the healers have to play a role of not saying that, okay, this our therapy will cure everything. No, we have to make our patients, people, as an equal partner in healing. This is the first thing that I often tell our patients, that yes, definitely our treatment will help you, the medicines will help you, but if you really want to go to the root of it in today's time, you have to work on it your own self as well. And I do believe that this kind of a conversation really makes a lot of difference. And more importantly, what I have also seen with patients in today's time is that they are keen about it. And the more you are able to give them examples, the more they are able to see things around, and the more you are able to see that everything is actually more 90% about what you eat. So if you can make a difference just there, everything else we can take care of.
Well, it's true, isn't it? That saying, that old saying, you are what you eat. Yeah. It's very, very true. And I've also found that people, even though vegetables are not perhaps as exciting perhaps as one would want, but people are now seriously looking at supplementing with plenty of green leaves, salads, and that's a good thing, isn't it? That's only a good thing.
Yeah. And Hippocrates famously spoke about it, and it's so true now, that he used to say that let food thy be your medicine and let medicine thy be your food. So it's very interesting for him to say that hundreds and hundreds of years ago. So definitely it has a huge role to play. However, I want to tell you something more important, that this is where homeopathy has a big role, that definitely food has a very important role, definitely. But in majority of cases, even after making these changes in diet, things don't improve. That means something more deeper has to be healed. And this kind of blocks can be opened with homeopathy. Why absorption is not happening, why autoimmune diseases are coming up. So this is where homeopathy really goes at the deepest, at the root level of it, and really works at that level. And that's where I do believe that a really good homeopathic healer can work on it at a much more holistic way.
What is your take on autoimmune diseases? What have you found in practice? Is there a causative agent, a causative influence?
It's multifactorial, and I'm talking about more clinical practice, and I'm not going research based, but I'm just telling you at a daily clinical practice level, because we are seeing tons of cases in the last few years. Somewhere down the line, a few things do make a difference, and now more and more researchers come out that a lot of family history and past history also has a lot to do. What Master Hahnemann spoke about as miasms and what you say as diathesis, somewhere a little hereditary tendencies do run. Is no doubt about it. The number two and the more important thing is psychosomatic aspects. So maybe there is something already there, and they are just flared up after certain psychosomatic events, which kind of can affect. So our lifestyle, the psychosomatic events can affect. And finally, the large part of it is your lifestyle in context of what you eat, what you drink, how you sleep, and how you think. All these things have such a huge role in today's times. And autoimmune disease, as we speak, is so common in a place like Mumbai, in a place like Paris, in a place like Curitiba in Brazil, in a place like New York in the US, everywhere, because the kind of food that we are making, the food industry, and the kind of pollution that we are going through, the kind of hurried, fast-paced life that we are living through, the autoimmune disease have increased by tons and tons of percentage. So definitely we have to calm down.
What about the fact that we're bombarded with frequencies? I mean, I've said this before that to a different guest, that just for this podcast, for example, I'm surrounded by different frequencies. Surely that can't be good for us. 100 years ago, this was never the case. Things were wired, and now we're in a wireless digital age. And of course, the benefits are amazing. There's no denying that. Amazing, fantastic. It's allowed for humanity to progress in leaps and bounds. Like, you're based there, we're in Mumbai, and I'm here in just outside London, and it's brilliant. We're talking, we're seeing one another as if we're in one room. But there's, of course, everything has a downside as well if it's overused or overdone. And frequencies, of course, cannot. Surely our cells cannot stay healthy by being bombarded with so many different types of frequencies at any one time.
Absolutely. And here, frequencies, we are talking about all different 3Gs, 4Gs, 5Gs, and all different Gs that come up. But not just this, even basic X-rays, even MRI, CT scans, and more researches show that when you do that very often, it does affect your body. The homeopaths have even proved remedies like X-ray, like radium bromide. And when they do the entire homeopathic approach, in many cases, when patients tell me that I've done so many X-rays and radiations I've gone through, I have to first prescribe a homeopathic remedy like X-ray and then give the indicated remedy to remove the layer of toxicity and the kind of frequencies and all that the patient has gone through. So there is no kind of debate about it at all.
Dr. Gaurang, I'm very fascinated by the fact that you have authored 3 books, and you did mention, of course, just a little earlier that there is a 4th on the way. But
fourth is already launched about 10 days back, and the 5th is something that we are working on, which will come end of this year, God willing, inshallah. I don't know if it happens. Yeah.
How are you going? How do you find so much time, and how do you look younger than 37 as well? That's one question that's been bugging me for the last 20 minutes, because you don't look 37, you look much younger. It must be the remedies, right?
I hope it's not a disadvantage, because a large part of my life, patients would come in the clinic and they would look at me and they would often say that, where is the doctor? So it would actually be a disadvantage for a large part of my life, but it doesn't matter, because once you start your work, it doesn't matter. I always say this to my colleagues, to people who work with me, to students. I tell them very simple: what and how you look, where you come from, whose son, daughter you are, who your friend is, who your teacher is, doesn't matter two hoots. What matters is what you do in the moment while doing what you do. That's the only thing that matters. What gold medalist you are or whichever, it doesn't matter. Patient come to you and they just say, can you heal me? If you can heal me, if you even don't have a degree, I absolutely don't care about it. Patients are actually told that to me very often, that they would often say that, I have been to this doctor and they are like a 5-star doctor, but, forget all that. I feel you can help me, just help me. So it really doesn't matter. And one of the reason I am looking a little younger, slightly, and I was worse about 4-5 years back, because I was living a crazy life. I still live a crazy life. Is I worked a little bit on my diet, and I started working out a little bit more, slightly more balanced. I've tried to build a good team, good people in and around, remove toxic energy around me. It helps me.
And of course, Irfan Khan has helped you.
Irfan Khan is always there. He's there in my heart. Many people like that. And the best part is that I'm doing what I love doing. We are able to help so many patients. We are able to kind of motivate, encourage, teach so many homeopaths across the globe. We are able to meet like-minded people like yourself. And, just this energy, how much ever life God gives us, let's do some interesting work. And that passion itself keeps us alive and makes us want to look forward to the next day. I think one of very senior homeopath in India once told me that, the allopath, as soon as he grows older, he becomes more cynical, he becomes more critical, he becomes more irritated, frustrated, despaired, because every day he has to give the same thing. This go, this go. Homeopath, as he becomes older, he becomes more inquisitive. He becomes much more enthusiastic, because for him, every day is new. Every day is a new case. Every day is a new analysis. So, well, the great Vijaykar, late Dr. Vijaykar, who we lost during our pandemic, once famously said that, you cannot choose a field like homeopathy, but actually homeopathy chooses you. So someone who says that I wanted to be a homeopath and I am a homeopath, I just want to say that you cannot choose a divine science like homeopathy. It chooses you.
Very, very wise words indeed. And it's a good opportunity actually to reflect on that, because, you've said something very nice, and we all have long days. I'm sure you have very long days, and the phone keeps ringing, and nowadays patients are WhatsApp platform, text message. It's very easy as well for the patient to get in touch, right? But and sometimes you've had a really, really long day, and it's like 10, 11 o'clock at night, and the phone rings again and again. But what a blessing. How amazing that a position to be in, where somebody is asking for your help. I mean, it can't get better than that, right?
And again, I give a lot of quotes, because I've ended up in the last 20 years reading a lot of books. I wish I could show you around my this room with all the books kept up, but because there are some more things, crazy things down, so I can't show you this room. But you can imagine that, it's written in the preface and forward to the famous medicine book by Harrison, that being a physician is one of the biggest opportunity that you can get in your life, because there can be not a more bigger opportunity where someone comes to you for their own health, to heal from within, to a physician. So it's a huge opportunity if someone comes to you for help.
Absolutely, 100%. So true. Tell me about what's on the horizon for you as far as going forward is concerned. And I mean, are you in practice 7 days a week as well at the moment? I'm sure our listeners would be interested to know.
At this moment, yes, 7 days a week, because in the last 6 odd months, I had to travel a lot. I traveled to Brazil in October I teach there, and I had to launch a book, see patients there, then to France, in Paris. Then just a month back, I was in Moscow, actually, interestingly, to teach and also to see few patients. And next month, I'm going to Brazil again, and then later part to Hungary. So due to the traveling, some of my patients, I couldn't kind of see all the patients, so I have to work sometimes on the weekends also. But more or less, for a large part of my life, I kind of planned for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 10 years. But somehow, in the recent past, I found a way to kind of trying to be more in the now. I'm seeing what is the best I can do at this moment when I'm talking to Mr. Bhattiji, and what is the best I can do now at this moment. So yes, obviously you can't go without planning for something immediate in the next month and a half, whatever we plan. But the more focus is more in the now, and that brings a lot of calmness and kind of deep kind of healing within, and more focus into joy that you can feel within while doing what you enjoy doing the most.
I wanted to ask you something a bit lighthearted now. We've had a very serious conversation, of course, but and I asked this to all my guests pretty much, I suppose, during the podcast and sometimes offline. But do you have any favorite remedies? Now, before you answer that, I know that's a very difficult question because it can depend on cases, but what are your own personal remedies which you feel are your personal favorites, the ones that perhaps you go to time and time again?
Yeah, I mean, it's a topic that not many people would like to openly talk about, but as you know, I absolutely love talking about things that that we need to talk with all honesty. Is the kind of practice that I have, Bhattiji, is that a large number of my practice are referrals from other homeopathic doctors. That's also because the kind of work that we do, because we are involved in teaching, we are involved in a kind of practice where patients are not directly often coming to me. Many of the doctors would probably try 2, 3, 4, 5 remedies, and probably I will be the 6th or the 7th person who might be seeing this. And that also means that sometimes, and more often than not, patients have already taken the typical, an injury patient has already taken arnica, natrum sulph, hypericum, ruta, rustox, symphytum. So, you don't even have to look there. You straight away have to go from another level to thinking. So, and that's one of the main reasons that one has to straight away start thinking a little out of box prescriptions. And that's also one of the interesting things that happened in the last 5 years is my work on sarcoids, remedies like pituitary gland, thyroidinum, insulinum, and also bowel nosodes, like which actually are originated in the UK.
Yes,
the great
Dr. Batch.
Yes, Batch and Dr. Patterson and on the entire team, they worked so much on it, and I'm using them now almost like a polychrist remedy. In fact, I hope you know that I've written a book on nosode, sarcoid, and bowel nosode with my approaches in it. And
yes, they're called the materia medica of nosodes and sarcoids.
Yeah, I took it because these are almost forgotten remedies in today's times, which are very well known, have been tested time and time again, and amazing remedies which can make a huge difference. So these remedies somewhere I felt were probably remedies that helped me to help my patients more often than not. And I also run a course of nosodes, sarcoids, and bowel nosodes of about 8 hours, a certificate course. If anyone wants to do it, anyone who comes through Bhattiji gets a 50% off on this course. Whoever joins for this course, I'll give it off, because my idea is more people have to learn this and help as many patients as you can. So my email ID I will give in the end, gaurang@gmail.com. Just give a reference of Bhattiji for the discount for the course.
I hope everyone's paying attention to that. That's 50% off.
Yes.
Very, very important. Now, as far as the books, you've also actually written a book on the art of repertorization. And I know that your books have been translated into some other languages as well. Do tell a bit more about this book, The Art of Repertorization. And indeed, you are absolutely right with the title. It is an art, and it takes many, many years. One doesn't just go straight into it and open a book and say, oh, here we are.
Actually, I, it's very interesting, but my first book I wrote was Decoding Mental Rubrics. It took me about 9 years to write this book. And I started writing it during my internship when I started working with Dr. Sankaran in his first private OPD in the college, and with Dr. Segal's approach and someone called as Dr. Milind Rao from HHF. And then with Dr. Sarkar. So it took me 9 years to understand every rubric and what it means. For example, I'll just give you a random example so that, we kind of really get the hold of it. Like, abrupt. In Kent repertory, there's a rubric, first rubric, abrupt. So abrupt, what it means. There are only 2 remedies in that rubric. In Kent, there is natromute, there is tarantula. Abrupt comes from the word disrupt, which comes from the word rupture. So anything that happens sudden is at the deeper level, abrupt, something which is continued and something then suddenly breaks. This is abrupt. So what is natromute doing in abrupt? So the idea is sudden breakage of a long continued relationship and then aversion from that person is natromute. What is tarantula doing in abrupt is something continued, something kind of breaking to gain attention. That is tarantula in abrupt. So in this way, and then explaining cases, I tried to do that for every rubric, close to about 300-400 rubrics. And because the reason I wrote that book, the first book, Decoding Mental Rubric, because I wanted to understand those rubrics. And I took it as an opportunity to write it. And the second book then I wrote was Nosode Sarcoid, which helped me change my practice. And the third book that I wrote was Art of Repertorization. And I felt at that point, because the repertories like Bonninghausen, Clark, Roberts' Sensation, as if, and Nair were almost obsolete. People stopped using it because of the newer repertories coming up, complete synthesis, and they are good. There's no doubt about it. But these classic literatures were forgotten, and I felt a need to kind of revive it, and I felt I should do something and share it with the world so they can read it and apply it and use it. But strangely, many people bought those books, but very few people could understand because it's a very technical book. Someone who's really passionate about understanding repertory would actually understand this different techniques of repertorizations, because you have to understand a lot of the idea of how Roberts thought, how Nair thought, how Clark thought, because Clark repertory is based on causations. So if there's a strong causation in the case, you think about Clark repertory, for example. What about Phatak? Pathak was more based on generals and generalization. So it's a book. If you are a very passionate lover of repertory, it's a book you should have.
That's really interesting the way you've put that, actually, and highly commendable that you've actually worked on those books which you feel will make a big difference, to the understanding by homeopathic doctors, homeopaths, and also students of homeopathy itself. What's on the horizon? What are you working on next? And where is your journey heading? Do you have time to think about that?
Now that you're telling me, I'm just trying to think about it. Actually, there are many exciting things happening. This is the best time to be in homeopathy. But TG, this is something that I can tell you from my heart, and I'm sure this energy, this vibes, you also get this at this moment and at this time. And we really have to thank our ancestors of homeopathy for this, right from Hahnemann to Kent to Dunham, to right up to Vitulkas, to Vijaykar, to Dr. Sankaran, to every single homeopath, Dr. Sarkar, everyone. Because what they did, they put us in this place where now homeopathy is so respected, is reputed, results are out. Still, the percentage of people who totally are dependent on homeopathy are less, but there is a more openness, there is more inclusivity. People are looking forward for healing opportunities. And this is where I see that, and I see myself as one of the small mediums which could play a role along with a large sea of homeopaths who could help patients, who could help inspire some homeopaths to take up this idea of kind of synergizing classical homeopathy with a lot of newer ideas. And yes, finding my joy within this journey is what I'm hoping that can happen, and I'm sure that that it brings me joy. So I will try to do that as much as I possibly can.
Dr. Gaurang, it's been an absolute delight actually having you on the podcast. Fascinating hearing from you this journey that you're on, the journey you've been on, and what the future holds for you. I'd like to especially thank you for taking time out. It's been great, and certainly I hope that later this year you can come back and share some more with us.
Absolutely, Bhattiji. It's a pleasure, and I'm glad that what you're doing is such an important part, and I want to congratulate you into doing this kind of thing where you are almost becoming a medium of spreading homeopathy for people in and around in different parts of the world, and people like you need to be more encouraged and supported by all colleagues in and around us. And I'm hopeful that in time to come, more people will be inspired due to you becoming a medium in homeopathy. Thank you so much for doing what you do.
I'm humbled by your kind words. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Pleasure is mine. Thank you.
I do hope you've enjoyed the Homeopathy Health Show here on UK Health Radio, the world's #1 talk health radio. Tune in next time for more things homeopathy, interviews, and segments on the healing possibilities that homeopathy can bring you. And don't forget to visit UK Health Radio online at www.ukhealthradio.com to see the many other amazing shows available to listen live and on demand. Or why not download the app from the iOS and Android stores. Until next time, stay safe and take care.